Moreover, will he bring back on you all the diseases of Egypt, of which you were afraid, and they shall cling to you. Also, every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of the law will the Lord bring upon you until you are destroyed.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Best Gnosis. Thank you so much for joining me again. In this episode, we're going to be discussing the law, specifically who gave it. There is so much information crammed into this episode, so make sure you have your pen and paper ready to take down notes if that's what you like to do. And let's not hold it up anymore. Let's jump right in. So we're going to get started at Exodus 24:12. And the Lord said unto Moses, Come up to me into the mount and be there, and I will give thee tablets of stone and a law and commandments which I have written, that thou mayest teach them. So here we have Yahweh commanding Moses to come up into the mountain where Yahweh can give him the law that has been specifically written by Yahweh. And so we get confirmation of this in Exodus 31:18. And he gave unto Moses, when he had made an end of the communion with him upon Mount Sinai, 2 tablets of testimony, tablets of stone written with the finger of God. So during this time that Moses is actually up in the mountain of Sinai with Yahweh, the people that have come with him, the followers, the people out of Egypt who are down below the mountain, are a little bit confused. Moses hasn't returned yet. They're concerned. So what they end up doing is they make a calf out of gold using their earrings that they had, which of course in turn angers Yahweh. And so we see what takes place here in Exodus 32:7 is where that actually begins. So, and the Lord said unto Moses, Go get thee down, for the people which thou broughtest out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. And so we see a little bit more here that Yahweh is actually very unhappy about this. So Exodus 32:10 through 11. Now therefore let me alone, that my wrath may wax hot against them, and that I may consume them, and I will make thee a great nation. And Moses besought the Lord his God, and said, Lord, why does thy wrath wax hot against thy people, which thou hast brought forth out of the land of Egypt with great power and with a mighty hand? And so moving on over to Exodus 32:12, wherefore should the Egyptians speak and say, for mischief did he bring them out, to slay them in the mountains and to consume them from the face of the earth? Turn from thy fierce wrath and repent of this evil against thy people. And so in Exodus 32:14, the Lord repented of the evil which he thought to do unto his people. So let's move on. Exodus 32:15 through 16. And Moses turned and went down from the mount, and the 2 tablets of the testimony were in his hand, and the tablets were written on both their sides, and the one side and the other side were they written. And the tablets were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God graven upon the tablets. Now moving over to Exodus 32:19. And it came to pass, as soon as he came nigh unto the camp, that he saw the calf and the dancing, and Moses' anger waxed hot, and he cast the tablets out of his hands and brake them beneath the mount. So here Moses comes down off the mountain. He visually sees this calf, and it pisses him off. I mean, it angers him beyond belief, like it angered Yahweh. So Moses feels like, well, what's the point of these tablets? They're not going to listen anyway. So he breaks them himself. Now jumping over to Exodus 34:1 through 2. And the Lord said unto Moses, Hew thee 2 tablets of stone like unto the first, and I will write upon these tablets the words that were in the first tablets, which thou breakest. And be ready in the morning, and come up in the morning unto Mount Sinai, and present thyself there to me in the top of the mount. And so Moses is told by Yahweh now to cut out 2 more stones and bring them back up to Mount Sinai so that he can rewrite the laws on these tablets. We see this in Exodus 34, 4 through 5. And he hewed 2 tablets of stone, like unto the first. And Moses rose up early in the morning and went up onto Mount Sinai, as the Lord had commanded him, and took in his hands the 2 tablets of stone. And the Lord descended in a cloud and stood with him there, and proclaimed the name of the Lord. All right, so to sum this up, not that there was ever really any doubt that Yahweh is who gave the tablets to Moses. But we clearly see within all of the verses that we just covered that Moses, in fact, received the tablets specifically from Yahweh, who actually appeared in front of him on a cloud, as we saw in the last verse. All right, let's jump over to the New Testament. We're going to be taking a look at 2 different verses here, John 5:37 as well as John 6:46. Starting out with John 5:37, and the Father himself which hath sent me hath borne witness of me. Ye have neither heard his voice at any time nor seen his shape. John 6:46, not that any man hath seen the Father, save he which is of God. He has seen the Father. So that's interesting because it appears that Moses is doing a lot of one-on-one with Yahweh, whether it be looking at Yahweh or talking with Yahweh. So maybe now the idea is popping in your mind that angels delivered this law for the Father. Maybe that's the conclusion you're coming to by reading this. Well, I find it kind of funny that at no time does any one of these angels, or Yahweh specifically, say, I am a messenger bringing you the Father's message. Instead, what we see is the angel demanding worship, no one can argue that, and specifically handing these laws to Moses. Now, you're thinking, well, it doesn't have to be said. Well, maybe it does have to be said. Let's take a look at Revelations 22, 8 through 9. And I, John, saw these things and heard them. And when I had heard and seen, I fell down to worship before the feet of the angel which showed me these things. Then saith unto me, see thou do it not, for I am thy fellow servant, and of thy brethren the prophets, and of them which keep the sayings of this book. Worship God. Oh, man. Well, I'd say this angel is making it perfectly clear. Do not worship me, worship God. Therefore, he is making a statement that he is a servant like him and that there should be no worship of angels. Well, I bet the gears in your mind are kind of rotating now. Because it's really leaving you with next to no options. We really only have 2 options here, folks. And these options are basically Jesus is a liar, and I'll let you go ahead and make that claim, or Yahweh is an angel and not the Father. Now, of course, you could be thinking, well, it doesn't say that Moses actually speaks to Yahweh face to face, so, that's still up in the air. Oh no? Well, let's go ahead and jump on over to Exodus 33:11. And the Lord spake unto Moses face to face. Well, I think we might have a problem now, don't we? If Moses is speaking to Yahweh face to face, and Jesus is saying no man has ever seen the Father, not even his shape, someone is wrong. So now what I'd like to do is read Colossians 2, 14 through 18. But we're going to break down every verse and see exactly what it exposes. So let's start in the beginning of that verse. Colossians 2, verse 14. Blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this verse in the Greek. So just as a quick update, and I'm sure many of you know this, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, maybe a mixture of some Aramaic in there, and the New Testament was written in Greek. So anytime we're exposing these definitions, we're wanting to go back to the original, having blotted out the against us handwriting in the decrees. So what we really want to find out here is what that word decrees means. So let's go ahead and pull that up. Here, decrees, according to the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, is going to be civil, specifically a law, civil, ceremonial, or ecclesiastical. Decree or ordinances. There's that word ordinance. So here we have civil, ceremonial, or ecclesiastical. So let's break those down to get a better understanding of what that is. So civil law. So that's going to basically be your Roman law, especially as set forth during the Justinian Code. So that's your civil law. Let's go ahead and take a look at the ceremonial law. So that is a law prescribing the ceremonies of religion as those of the Jewish religion contained in the Old Testament. Well, we can equate that to the Mosaic law, which is the ancient Hebrew moral and ceremonial law attributed to Moses. All right, let's take a look at the ecclesiastical law. So that's going to be the canon law, and the canon law tells us that is the laws of a religion. So we clearly know what the decrees are here. It's all the laws. Let's move on to the next part of this verse. Now, this is where things get a little crazy, so stay with me, folks. Colossians 2:15. And having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them in it. So now we're going to go ahead and take a look at this portion of the verse in the Greek so we can get a much clearer understanding of what they actually were saying. So here we have, having disarmed the rulers and the authorities, he made a show of them in public, having triumphed over them in it. Well, here we see rulers and authorities are your equation to principalities and powers. So looking back at that verse, you can come to the conclusion that the principalities and powers are actually the rulers and authorities. Well, let's stop right there for a moment. And I want to jump over real quick to another verse, which is Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Well, that's funny. There's your principalities and powers that we battle with, and they're not flesh and blood. And here we get some confirmation of that. So we're going to move into the next part of that verse, Colossians 2:16 through 17. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of a holy day or of the new moon or of the Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ. Okay, that's a powerhouse. So let's go ahead and take a look at this word shadow. Let's see what that word shadow means. Here in the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, we see shadow, which is literally or figuratively darkness of error or an adumbration. So it's not the real thing, folks. The real thing is Christ. Jesus is the real thing. This is darkness of error. This is an adumbration. This is an outline, a false. This is a fake version of the real thing. Colossians 2:18. Let no man beguile you of your reward in a voluntary humility and worshiping of angels, intruding into those things which he hath not seen, vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind. So, basically what that's saying is, we are to follow Jesus in humility, whose authority comes from the Father, But we are not to follow man in humility, whose authority comes from angels. All right, everyone. This is getting heavy, folks. I hope you guys are following me here. So as a conclusion, we can assume that man equals Moses, the angels equal Yahweh and his angels, Yahweh and his angels equal the rulers and authorities, and the rulers and authorities equal the principalities and powers. So what happened? Well, Jesus hung Yahweh's law, which is the principality and powers, on the cross.